All right, man. Peace. I had to save on my DVR also. I finally caught it. There was a trustee for Penn State University. Right now, he's a former trustee named Albert Lord. He made certain inflammatory comments about the victims of the Jerry Sandusky pedophilia ring that was going on at Penn State University. So now let's see what goes on here.
You are so disrespectful. He is going to fall off a cliff. Shut the hell up. That's not even close to my best. They're wrong. And I don't give a damn that they agree with me or not. I have nothing against most of the hundreds of thousands of people who went to Penn State University. I have no problem with their rooting for their football team for generation after generation. The way they love their football team and coach does not imply and did not imply consent for serial predatory sexual crime against boys.
Yeah, but you know what? If you know that your coach co-signed a pedophile ring and you're more concerned with the coach's legacy and him maintaining his position, then you are tacitly co-signing the acts that were committed against those boys. Almost all black boys too. I believe that every last one of them was so-called black. All right. If I'm wrong, please somebody correct me. But I believe that well over 90% of those boys were so-called black boys. All right.
But I do have something against the people whose negligence or willful ignorance allowed Jerry Sandusky to do what he did.
And it was willful ignorance. All right. Pedophilia is a way of life in certain areas of this society. All right. It's known as pederasty, man-boy love. For those of you who are not familiar with it, look up the organization known as NAMBLA, N-A-M-B-L-A. I believe the acronym stands for the National Association of Man-Boy Love or something like that. I can't remember what the A stands for at the end. But look that up. They have congressional representation. All right. That is a major part of this society. Like I told you, pedophilia or pederasty in the veneration of the god Pan. That is something that they're going to try to promote as we move past the so-called transgender movement. The next phase will be the pederasty movement. All right. Like I've said, the Psychiatric Association they've already tried to declare pedophilia as a sexual preference. Due to some pushback, they had to change it back. But they do believe that pedophilia is a sexual preference. Like I've said before, the originators of the psychiatric pseudoscience, all those guys were pedophiles. All of those guys were pansexuals. Alfred Kinsey, Freud, all those guys. All right.
The coaches, the administrators, the officers of the school, they have deserved whatever punishment they have received. All of them. Penn State partisans want to move on. That's human nature, and it's understandable. They have the right to move on.
They never wanted to not move on. They could have cared less what happened to any of those boys. They don't care about that. They look at the so-called black man and the so-called black boy as a toy. And we're gonna go into the black man being viewed as a toy later on.
Appropriately. And how do I define appropriately? Well, let's just say I know inappropriate when I see it. And I saw it last night in a news story I read. When a Penn State University trustee named Albert Lord
Now, Albert Lord, by now he's a former Penn State University trustee because he decided not to run to maintain his seat as a trustee because of the controversy surrounding his remarks. He also was involved in a FBI probe, an FBI investigation regarding a $1 million loan that he made to a Democratic nominee for the state of Pennsylvania. I can't remember the person's name. I believe his name was Chata Akam, something like that. Some strange name. But he was trying to get more Democrats nominated in the state of Pennsylvania so that they could help with the bailout because Albert Lord, while being a trustee at Penn State University, he was also the former CEO of Sallie Mae. For those of you who've gone to college and you've had to take out Sallie Mae loans, that's a multi-billion-dollar company. All right. They were looking for assistance. They were looking for government subsidies from the U.S. government, and they needed more Democratic representation. So Albert Lord got involved basically with a money laundering scheme. That's what he was being investigated for, allegedly. And Now he's here basically telling the victims of a pedophile ring to move on and get over it.
States in an email that he is, quote,
somebody should probably check his laptop. You never know what you might find on there.
running out of sympathy for the so-called victims. So-called victims are his words. That is not moving on appropriately.
Well, remember, in this, he probably is saying so-called based on the fact that some of those boys continued in their relationship with Sandusky. You have to understand something, and this is why I stated the things that I stated on the so-called on the gay gene being debunked video. Many of these children, when they engage in these degenerate relationships with adult males, they actually are trained to believe that they're in a loving relationship. All right. This is why I call it a mental illness, a mental disorder. That demon is passed from the adult male to the child when they engage in those acts. All right. That's why, once again, Peter Pan, his crew was known as the Lost Boys. What was implied was that Peter Pan was finding strange boys and he was engaging in intimate relations with them. That comes from the god Pan. Right. He engaged in pederasty. He would have sex with boys. This is what goes on here. A lot of these boys, they get their minds so messed up. They think that they're actually in a loving relationship. And what the Caucasian male oftentimes, when they engage in pederasty with a young black boy, they will give them gifts to keep them quiet. So now that oftentimes will give people like Albert Lord, who, like I said, somebody should check his laptop as well. That will give him license to make those type of statements that they're so-called victims.
When Albert Lord describes the survivors of Jerry Sandusky as 30-somethings with lots of money, that is not moving on appropriately.
Now, I wonder how many of those survivors of Jerry Sandusky and his pedophilia, his pedophile ring, I wonder how many of them are homosexuals today. Right? Since most of the Caucasian homosexuals that are flooding the comment section in the gay gene video, they're claiming that pedophilia has nothing to do with being a homosexual.
Mr. Lord does not seem to grasp the fact that sex crimes leave survivors who will always be survivors.
Yes, and unfortunately, many of them, their brains and their minds have been so adulterated, they will go on to molest other children themselves. That's how that demon works.
After they were the victims.
Allegedly.
There are people whose lives were changed forever for the much more difficult thanks to Jerry Sandusky and his enablers at Albert Lord's Penn State University.
Enablers and participants. Believe me, that thing, Jerry Sandusky's like Nino Brown. Believe me, there's much bigger than him. But they left it at that because if they would have made it bigger than him, Jerry Sandusky, he had to, he was the fall guy. Right? He probably was the point man for probably what was a brothel, basically. Wouldn't shock me at all. But he was the fall guy because that was much bigger than him. It's just he's just the guy who played the pansy.
And Mr. Lord should know this.
For those of you out there interested in the topic, you guys should check out a book called The Franklin Cover-Up. That traces a lot of sex trafficking and pedophile rings. I believe that the Franklin Cover-Up was involved with one in Nebraska.
Our reservoir of sympathy and support for survivors has no limit. We don't run out of sympathy, dude. We try to move on, but we never forget or disrespect what happened there. So Albert Lord can move on, but he should do so quietly, after he apologizes.
Right, but you have to understand the mentality behind that. It's equivalent to when a homosexual will tell somebody that they shouldn't find it to be an insult when a homosexual man tries to flirt or hit on a heterosexual man. They'll try to tell you that it was a compliment. You should take it as a compliment. In that world that Albert Lord lives in, where pederasty is the way of life, they don't view what they do to children as evil. They view it as love. All right. That's why their organization is known as Man Boy Love. And I'm not saying he's a member of that organization. All right. Once again, everything I'm saying is alleged. Not saying he's a member at all, but it would not shock me. Like I said, check his laptop.
And maybe resigns.
Thank you, Max. So well done. Be sure to head over to our Facebook and Twitter pages to see more of our final takes and leave your comments. And also, we'll be back on Monday to break down all.
But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because, like I said, like I've stated in the past, the pedophile thing, the pederasty thing, that's the next step. All right, peace.